We have more on the ongoing saga of the Trump dossier. Senators Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham have launched a probe into former National Security Advisor Susan Rice. In the very final minutes of the Obama administration, just after noon on Inauguration Day 2017, Rice sent herself an email on the White House computer system. In it, she described a meeting she'd attended just 2 weeks before, on January 5th. At that meeting were President Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, FBI Director Jim Comey, Deputy AG Sally Yates, and Susan Rice herself. According to Rice, in this email, Obama instructed the officials in the room to consider withholding national intelligence from the incoming Trump administration in case they were compromised by Russia. In other words, almost 2 months after the presidential election, Barack Obama viewed Trump not as his democratically elected successor, but as a traitor and a Russian spy. Obama viewed himself as someone who somehow had the right to withhold government documents from an elected president. That's not the behavior of someone who believes in democracy. And yet that meeting set the tone for that year and all subsequent arguments since. Democrats have treated Trump and his election as illegitimate ever since then. And at the heart of their case against Trump and this administration is the Steele dossier. To this day, the dossier is the only publicly available document that details alleged collusion with Russia. Now, of course, we've talked a lot about the dossier on this program, but relatively little about what is in it. What does the dossier actually claim? Is any of it true? After more than a year of probing by politicians and intelligence agencies and journalists, here's the sum total of what we actually know about the document that started all of this. We know the dossier was compiled by Christopher Steele, acting as a contractor of Fusion GPS, with funds supplied by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. The dossier was a form of opposition research designed to be used against Trump in the presidential campaign. It was not an intelligence document. It was Oppo. The dossier claims that Russian authorities didn't simply collude with Trump during the 2016 election, the charge you hear a lot about. It also claims that Russian intelligence cultivated Donald Trump as a kind of asset, a kind of one-man sleeper cell for more than 5 years. Needless to say, there's no evidence of that. The dossier also claims the Kremlin fed the Trump team intel reports on Hillary Clinton and other political opponents for years. There's no proof of that either. It claims Trump was favored by Moscow with lucrative Russian real estate deals as part of his cultivation as a political asset, that sleeper cell. No proof there either. According to the dossier, Trump and Russia were exchanging intelligence with each other for at least 8 years. No proof of that. The dossier goes on to describe a clandestine meeting in Prague between Trump lawyer Michael Cohen and a Kremlin representative, supposedly that took place in August of 2016. This is one of the very few claims in the dossier that has been conclusively checked, and it's false. Cohen wasn't even outside the U.S. at the time the meeting supposedly took place. In sum, the Steele dossier is absurd. The closer you read it, the more absurd it is. Take 10 minutes and do so yourself. It's online. And as you read it, ask yourself, who would believe something like this? It's so transparently partisan and unlikely and stupid and flimsy. It reads like a parody of a badly written spy novel. At the same time he was firing people on The Apprentice, Donald Trump was working with Vladimir Putin to subvert America. It's hard even to say that with a straight face. It's that stupid. And yet keep in mind and never forget, this is the document the FBI used to justify spying on American citizens. These are the claims that Democrats in Congress repeatedly cited as the reason to stop the normal functioning of government in order to investigate the administration. This is the famous dossier that even today, progressives in the media are spending millions in an attempt to corroborate. And it's all a stupid joke. Amazingly, a lot of people in power fell for it. Richard Goodstein is an attorney. He advised both of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. He joins us tonight. Richard, great to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
So this dossier, I think everyone concedes, is at the very center of everything. It comes from BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed, the publication, now has apparently hired a former FBI official and others to travel the globe and try and corroborate it, so far without success. But BuzzFeed is at the center of this. The FBI used this BuzzFeed document to justify spying on an American citizen. So I'm wondering, Were there other BuzzFeed documents that are part of this? I want to put, like, this story. I read BuzzFeed. I'm sure you do, too. 31 slightly weird things all girls do in the bathroom but don't talk about. That's a BuzzFeed story. Was that in any way part of this investigation?
Anything else you want to talk about that's, like, relevant to the fact that we know?
You'll love if you're lactose intolerant but can't stop eating dairy?
Can we talk about the fact that this whole premise is twisted, that the FBI shielded Donald Trump because they knew, the intelligence community knew, that's what they briefed the president and the vice president about in the Susan Rice memo, about the fact that the Russians had interfered and they went, outside their rules to go after Hillary Clinton. So can we at least have that as a premise?
Okay, so here's the premise is this. Allegations were made against the Trump campaign, very specific ones, that they colluded with the Russian government to win the election, that moreover the president had been a longtime Russian agent. And those are very serious allegations. The former president took them seriously enough. As you just heard, he considered withholding intelligence from the incoming president. And so the question is, if you make allegations like that, do you have any obligation to prove them? And at a certain point, do you have any obligation to admit they weren't true and apologize?
Yeah, let's put aside this whole 5-year business. Let's talk about what we know.
What we know?
Well, because what we know is that Michael Flynn was a foreign agent. Donald Trump hired
Donald Trump. Russia? I'm asking.
Turkey, we know that.
And Turkey the same as Russia?
Well, he just didn't disclose what he was being paid by Russia or Turkey, right? We know that. And we also know, because of the wiretaps of Kislyak, that he asked Kislyak, look, go easy. We're going to not proceed with the sanctions. And guess what? We just saw that within the past 2 weeks. Lo and behold, they didn't.
Didn't Trump, am I misremembering this? Did Trump campaign on that? I think he campaigned on that in public. Does that make him a Russian agent? Because that's actually a policy position. You can be against sanctions against Russia, as I am, and not be a Russian agent? Does that make sense?
I think that any U.S. official in the intelligence community would be derelict if they knew that the National Security Advisor coming in could be compromised because he had lied about the fact that he was a foreign agent. He did not disclose that. And guess what? Just like Rob Porter was subject to blackmail, so is Michael Flynn. And guess what? If you're coming in, well, I'm just saying, we don't know what you're putting this as Trump. What the president was saying in the Susan Rice memo is, essentially, we've got a guy who's going to be sitting steps from the Oval Office who's a foreign agent. Okay, and we know that he's got these ties to Russia. We know that he approached Kislyak, and we can't trust that he won't approach Kislyak about something that's more secret than sanctions.
Let me just ask you a question. Are you allowed to have a different view on sanctions than the one Barack Obama had, or the one that you have, or is that criminal?
It's not a question.
Do you realize that you're going insane on TV right now? I mean, you're actually saying things that are not only legal but totally legitimate.
I think
and you're acting as if they're immoral.
What's insane is that it's normal that you would have as your national security agent official a foreign agent. That is insane. That is demonstrably insane. And that's what we had. Sorry.
No, actually we didn't at that point. No. And I would say, as I've said 100 times on this show, that it was wrong of Mike Flynn to take money from the government of Turkey. But in point of fact, when he showed up to work at the White House, he was not a foreign agent at that point. And like a lot of people in Washington, including a lot of people he took money from a foreign government to change American policy. I think that's wrong. It happens every day. And our policies are driven by that fact, as you know.
People don't do that in the White House. In the White House, he used his authority to basically push policies that were going to benefit Turkey. He told Susan Rice, don't go into Raqqa. Why? Because it was going to involve the Kurdish military, which was adverse to Turkish interests. So this is, you talk about traitors. That's traitorism.
Okay, that traitorism.
Yes.
Okay, we're coining new words.
We are.
So let me just ask you this. None of that actually gets to the point. I mean, you're saying that he had taken money from the Turkish government. That's wrong. I agree with you on that. But none of this has anything to do with the core claim, which has basically wrecked our government for over a year. And at a certain point, do you feel like maybe you're responsible for this insanity, which is destroying the concept of due process, making it impossible for anyone to think clearly? Do you think maybe I'm part of this? Maybe I should pull back a little bit and be rational?
Let me make 4 points in 10 seconds. The Russians said to the Trump people, we can help you. Donald Trump Jr., love it, bring it on. The Russians did it with Wikipedia, and Trump, therefore, used it 100 times on the campaign trail, encouraging the Russians to steal from Hillary Clinton, okay? So that is, yes, that is a problem.
So does it bother you that the Hillary Clinton campaign paid through a foreign intelligence agent, steal Russian sources to gather Russian government information to use against their opponent, Donald Trump? I'm not sure why that's so different.
I'll tell you what, one step,
it's very different.
One step, the Russians stole And what Hillary Clinton did was get information that was frankly a matter of public record, right? And incidentally,
it's a matter of public record that Trump was working for the Russian government for 5 years.
And
what public record was that?
Incidentally, when the Mueller report is finished, we'll see what was fact and what's not. You can laugh, we can laugh, but I have a hunch that
you believe it or
you're
not
not going to be the last one laughing here.
Yeah, I don't know. I may have to leave the country. If all this is true, then nothing I've believed in, or nothing that seems real is.
Well,